Good evening, everyone. I decided to open this a little bit early because I'm still figuring out how YouTube works. I know you would think that after 3 years of kind of being behind the scenes at Timcast IRL, I would know all this stuff, but there were basic things that were in place before I was even on the scene or in the picture that I was not privy to, so I'm really figuring it all out from scratch. It's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, but I've already made tons of mistakes, and part of the reason this week's been rough for me is because Andy is working. That's why we're here. It's a work trip. He's been working, so I've been kind of trying to figure it out on my own with somewhat limited success. So tonight, for example, I'm not going to be able to show you what I'm looking at on my screen, but I'm going to read you a few different things, and the links are definitely in the description. You guys can look those up if you want to. I like to have all my sources ready to go. Let me see if I can see the chat here. That would be nice. There we go. Hey, yeah, I caught you live. Yes, I am live tonight. I always prefer to go live. I think it's awesome. I think it's fun. I love talking to you guys. I have a great time with that for sure. Someone says you're doing great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've got some notes tonight because there are a couple things I want to go over that are super important. I was actually just reading about Jordan Peterson because he said something really interesting about women holding other women accountable, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing tonight. And you may wonder what this has to do with the Fetterman-Oz debate and what it has to do with Joe Biden, and I will explain all of it to you as we go forward. All right, so we'll just get the ball rolling and then people can tune in as they come. We'll just be a little early tonight. So I will open by saying that Andy and I are constantly talking about how awesome it is to be married to someone who understands the distinction between the genders. Because the distinction between the genders is not just that there's ladies and men. The difference is that there are different strengths we have and weaknesses that we help each other cover for. So women have physical weaknesses that they need help. The common trope is having the pickle jar that you can't open. But this is 100% factual. You really want a guy who can help you with, for example, Andy helped us move up north. Andy helped us pack the whole moving truck because that's his area of expertise. He actually did that in a previous life. He was a mover for several years, and he's really, really good at it, and he took all of the necessary steps. I don't think we broke a single thing. I broke one thing. I broke a lamp thing. Like one of those glass things you put on top of a lamp. Not his fault at all, entirely my doing. I threw something heavy at it because I didn't realize that it was glass and it shattered. So that was the only thing we broke for the whole move, and those were all of our belongings. That's Andy's strength. And we're constantly talking about how awesome it is that we really fulfill each other's weaknesses. Like, I'll do the budgeting, I'll do the housekeeping, I'll help keep everything in order. And I understand that that's what I'm supposed to be doing because he's so great at everything else. And I really think that's the better, more positive way to look at it. And I think that people tend to look at marriage wrong. They're like, well, have you heard the expression, the old ball and chain? I hate that expression so much because I don't know how conservative you guys are or how religious you were raised, but I was raised in a very biblically oriented setting where all of this came back to the Bible. And I've definitely come away from a lot of that, but I hold on to a lot of that serious wisdom because there is timeless wisdom in the Bible that I think people really just throw out with the bathwater. Honestly, I don't think they appreciate every nuanced view of human nature that's actually in the Bible. If you've ever read the Psalms and Proverbs, they talk about hope deferred making a heart sick. And I'm like, that's so true. That's every bit as true now as it was then. And it's just little things like that. And talking about the differences between men and women is a huge one in there too. My parents were constantly talking about the roles of males and females and roles of husbands and wives. And I always felt like it was a little bit stilted, but I'm starting to see it now. I think there's an organic, positive way you can talk about it that doesn't make it seem like, oh, the lady has to do this or oh, the husband has to do this. I think that there are great positive strengths you can take from both sides, and Andy and I are constantly grateful for each other because of that. So I was looking up Jordan Peterson because I was trying to find this quote that he has about women. He said specifically that women need to help hold each other accountable. Like, we have some crazy sisters out there. We've got some crazy feminine energy out in the world. And I personally have a theory that part of the political pathology we're seeing right now is very feminized political pathology. We're not seeing the forthgoing aggressive push that we used to see with battles and war, like we used to see. Historically speaking, that was a lot of what we saw. Not so much anymore. Now we're seeing more subtle, nuanced. We're trying to open our arms to everyone. We're trying to keep everyone safe. These are very feminine tendencies. They're liberal, but I think that feminine tendencies best describe a lot of these liberal tendencies for sure. So one of the things I want to do today is hold some of my crazy sisters accountable, and we are going to talk about what exactly that has to do with the Fetterman debate. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys before I get started on this, what you think the role of a wife should be. In an ideal married relationship, what should the role be of a wife? Just in general terms, nothing specific. You can tell me about your own experiences, whatever you want to talk about. But what do you think the role of a wife is? I'll tell you that I have always thought one of a wife's most important roles was keeping her husband in check. And I know that sounds a little bit condescending, but I mean it very sincerely, and I mean it in terms of good faith, because I think that men are naturally they're very aggressive. We know this. They're very aggressive. They tend to be outgoing, pushing forward. Somebody says helper and support. Somebody says cooking and cleaning. That's very practical. Somebody says, anyone who takes the Bible seriously needs to read Leviticus. You can read. Okay, first of all, I'm going to recommend you learn how to spell Leviticus and then get back to me with your Bible criticism. There's a lot of wisdom in the Bible, and I would point you in the direction of, for example, Ecclesiastes, and I can spell that. And I have read it many, many times. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not any wisdom in it. But I digress. So I've always thought that my role as a wife, ideally, should be to keep my husband in check. And that means tempering his outgoing, aggressive, testosterone-laden outlook on the world, which I think is awesome. I think that's one of the strengths that guys have that women need. The word helper in Genesis is a military term. A wife is supposed to be a strong partner without which the man would fail. I would refer you to Proverbs 31, where they talk about all of the wonderful things that a wife can do. There is, of course, the yin and yang element between husband and wife, but that's a good point. I agree. So, I think that one of the ways that a wife should keep her husband in check is by allowing her natural feminine energy to shine through and be persuasive. I don't know if this is a term I really like. I've heard it said, this is possibly from Game of Thrones, that a woman is the neck that turns the head. So you don't have to be the head. If you want to be an influencer, not like an influencer on Instagram, somebody who's actually making a difference, you'll be somebody who is pointing somebody in the right direction. And if I had to summarize the role of a wife in one term, that would be it. And I think it's probably pretty easy to see just from that how easy it would be for a wife to say something along the lines of, oh, here's my chance to be in power. And this is where I get to John Fetterman's wife and Jill Biden, and we're going to talk about her too, because I have serious issues with both of them. Men are great. They stay very fun and silly and reach too far. It's what makes them capable of greatness. So a wife's job is to temper some of that crazy optimism, not to be afraid to not be afraid to say no. Yeah, so like a military helper somebody was mentioning in the comments, I think that's a good parallel. Although women I don't think are suited for the military writ large. I think they could hold a different role than that. There's other things that women can specialize in. I think that Jill Biden, because she talks about being a doctor a lot, we know she's not a medical doctor, she's a very highly educated person who absolutely should have the common sense to be able to look at a situation and say, this is not good. Like, above being educated and above holding a doctorate degree, there's such an element of common sense that a good wife needs to be able to use what they often call feminine intuition and say, you shouldn't do that. That seems like a bad idea. I'm just going to throw my 2 cents out there. If you want to disregard what I'm saying, I feel strongly enough about this that I will stand my ground. Andy accuses me sometimes of choosing all the battles, and I am probably more disagreeable than I used to be. I used to be very shy and very, very agreeable. But I think there is a need for disagreeability. I think if you want to actually make a difference in the world, you cannot be afraid to be disagreeable. And that means not being afraid to, for example, tell someone that they don't know how to spell Leviticus and they don't have a firm stance to critique the Bible. And I think that you should be able to be a little bit I don't think it's unpleasant. I don't think disagreeability, okay, let me back up. I think disagreeability gets a bad rap because people associate it with being unpleasant. And I don't think that's fair. I think that being disagreeable means that you're willing to push back and to stand your ground. And one of the things that I have always thought that Jill Biden should have done should have been to say, Joe, stop. I don't think that you're physically fit to hold the highest office in the land. I would prefer for you to retire. You've been in office for 40-something years. You've done great work. You've done incredible things. This is a great place to call it quits. She didn't. And I don't know why she didn't, but I suspect it is because she is what I unaffectionately term an ambitious woman. So I have seen ambitious ladies over the course of my career, and it's never good. I don't know if I've mentioned this on one of my videos before. I certainly tweet about it a lot. And I would say that I'm definitely more disagreeable on Twitter than I am in real life or in my videos. But disagreeable women strike me as some of the most manipulative, some of the most, not deceptive, but they're very, very conniving. They want to get their own way, but they know that they're not physically strong enough to make it happen. So one of the things that they'll do is try to get their man to do what they want to get done. So this is what I saw with Jill Biden. It was very troubling to me then. I remember saying repeatedly that this was elder abuse, that she shouldn't be allowed to, encourage her husband to run for office when it was so clear that he was so unfit for it. That really saddened me even then. And to be fair, to be fully forthcoming, right now I don't really care what you think about Joe Biden. I don't love Joe Biden. I'm pretty sure that none of you guys do either. Setting aside his personal character, we're looking at the role of his wife, not at his role. Whatever you think of him, if he had a good wife who truly cared about him, she would have said no. Don't do it. If you do choose to do it, I won't be by your side. I'll be watching from a distance. I'll be cheering you on. I'll be with you in spirit, but I'm not going to condone this, and I'm going to resist it in every way that I can because I think this is really, really bad for you and worse for the country. It would have taken a great deal of character for her to look around and be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be really bad for the country if I let this happen. I need to push back. It's not just about me. But she didn't. She wanted to be first lady. She wanted to be in the public eye. She wanted to wear the fancy dresses. She wanted to get everyone's attention and love and commitment, and for the media to fawn over her. And she did. She succeeded. So what a woman sets her mind to, she tends to succeed at. The problem is that if she lacks the character and the moral fiber to say no when she needs to say no, you're going to find that not just she and her husband, but sometimes an entire country can be in dire straits because of her choices. So I genuinely do track a lot of what happened with Biden even being in office in the first place. Back to Jill Biden. But I digress about Jill. I need to turn to Gisele, because she is doing something similar with John. So I don't know if you guys watched any of the debate between John Fetterman and Dr. Mehmet Oz last night. It was terrible. I did not actually watch it myself. I simply follow a bunch of people who watched it like crazy and commented on it the entire time, which was kind of a buffer between watching it and not knowing anything about it. Because I did want to know what was going on, but I have a very high cringe factor. Like, I can't watch really embarrassing things without feeling such a great sense of embarrassment for the person in question. And I harbor no ill will toward John Fetterman. Like, I think that if he has the best ideas, he should certainly win. I have worked with patients who have had strokes and recovered to varying degrees of success. I will never forget, I had a female patient who was probably about somewhere in her late 60s, and she'd had a massive, terrible stroke. She was in dire straits. She took a lot of help to do the basic, getting up and moving around her room and trying to get into her wheelchair and everything. Her husband came in every day. It was great. She had a good support system. This lady was determined she was going to walk again. She was going to talk again. I remember how frustrated she would get when she was trying to explain what she wanted. And this must be even worse for men. It is so hard to lose your ability to express what you think, what you really want to happen. Like, if you even want like a different kind of juice and you can't explain it, it is insanely difficult. Like, just put yourself in that person's shoes for a moment and be like, okay, I can't tell the person who's helping me how they can best help me and how I want them to help me. It's just incredibly frustrating. I completely understand. So I have nothing but sympathy for John because he had a stroke. However, I do wish that he would have exercised his personal autonomy and said something along the lines of, you know what, Gisele, I think I'm out of this race because I want to do what's best for my state. I don't think I'm the man for the job. I'm going to see if I can help, promote somebody to take my place who will do a similar job that I would hope to do, if you know what I mean. And to try to bring someone in who's similar to what I would, hope to achieve in office. She overrode him. I am convinced. And I included a link in my description about what they were thinking that they would do with her, because from my understanding, John actually wanted his wife to be in his place as mayor of this little town that he was mayor of. It's from Breitbart. It says, report, Democrat John Fetterman sought to have his wife appointed Braddock mayor. Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, running against Mehmet Oz for the state's open U.S. Senate seat, reportedly sought to have his wife Gisele Fetterman appointed to political office. From 2006 to 2018, Fetterman served as the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, a town of fewer than 1,800 residents, this we know. After Fetterman was elected lieutenant governor in late 2018, The Incline reported that he sought to have his wife appointed Braddock mayor in the interim, offering a deal where he resigned immediately. That is so interesting to me because that tells me that not only does she have political aspirations, she has the influence over him to convince him to replace himself with her. So to me, that's a huge, huge red flag. That's such a bad idea. And I think that the reason that John Fetterman got up last night in front of the entire country and just completely embarrassed himself beyond, I'm convinced that was beyond all repair, because from my understanding, the Google searches for, can I take back my early vote spiked after that debate, because people who had, part of the reason they're having the debate, they had the debate just last night, was because the Fetterman campaign postponed because early voting started in September in Pennsylvania, and they wanted people to vote early and to have this strong start. That way, if they did end up debating, there would still be enough people who had voted for him that they wouldn't be able to walk it back or, revise what they had thought initially about him. So, which is just an incredible act of deception to my mind, but I digress on that as well. And as I was saying, I really think that the reason he got up in front of the entire country and just humiliated himself so utterly was due in no small part to his wife. His wife who tells reporters that they're not taking questions. His wife who goes after NBC, I believe it was NBC was the site, the organization that interviewed him. And the reporter was like, are you sure you're doing okay? Do you want to show us your medical records? The only records we have are from 6 months ago. This doesn't seem right. And his wife went after them for even asking those simple questions. And of course, they have all the media on their side because he is a Democrat. But his wife, so this level of toxicity really undermines a man's ability to make wise decisions. And this gets right to the heart of what makes a good, strong marriage and what makes a good wife and what separates a positive wife model from a negative one. Because if you go into a marriage with the understanding that you're going to be using it to achieve your own ends, you're going to have this as an end result. And if you don't, you're going to have a much more positive outcome. You're going to have a wife like, the wife of Rand Paul. You're going to have, Ron Paul's wife, Rand Paul's mother. You have all these ladies who are doing positive things. You have Amy Coney Barrett, who is successfully pursuing her own career and being a mom to 7 children, a bunch of whom she adopted. It is possible to go into the exact same situation, very similar, with a completely different outlook and a different goal for what you achieve there. And whatever, I think it was Henry Ford who said, whether you say you will or you won't, that's what will happen to you. So it's really entirely a case of what you decide to put your mind to. 100% the case for Jill Biden. Biden says First Lady doesn't want him to, quote, walk away from the job. Biden's political future hovers over the midterm elections. Yeah, so Jill Biden is pushing Joe to run again. She doesn't want him to, quote, walk away from the job. So this is just, to me, this is just an example of there is a dark side to both types of human nature. The male and the female both have these very, very negative aspects that need to be tempered. And that's one of the things that you hopefully accomplish in your marriage. If you have a strong man and a strong woman, you're going to kind of temper all the negative aspects of masculinity and all the negative aspects of femininity. This is why I need Andy to call me on the carpet when I, go above where I should be and I'm too disagreeable, or if I find myself being a little more manipulative than I should be. He's very acutely aware of it. And I'm also acutely aware of whatever he thinks that he needs to work on and things that I observe in him that I think should be fixed. But that's because we're approaching it from the right angle. And Jill and Gisele did not. They're doing the exact wrong thing. And my whole point in this video is to point out how much this feminine manipulation can affect countries, states. It's affecting the Senate. It affects the presidency. Actual insanity. So I tweeted, I actually care about Joe Biden and John Fetterman as human beings. Because of this, I honestly think their wives should be in prison for abuse. And you could call that too strong of terms, but I would accept nothing less if I saw someone abusing one of my patients when I worked in the healthcare industry, when I worked at a nursing home, when I worked at a rehab center, and when I worked at the cardiac facility. If you saw someone abusing someone else in any way, whether it's financially, whether it was, manipulating them emotionally, their emotional abuse is a very real thing. You were mandated to report what they were doing. And I think that they should have similar requirements for people who are in public office. I don't think that what Jill and Gisele are doing is in any way right. And I don't know of a better way to hold them accountable than to speak out in, for example, a video and be like, I think this is wrong. I think they're doing the wrong things. I think they should stop. I think that their poor husbands are being, underserved. This is a miscarriage of everything that a wife is supposed to be doing. And I think that people need to recognize that. And I really believe that people need to talk about it. I've never seen anyone talk about Gisele Fetterman. She blocked me for sure on Twitter not too long ago because I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I'm not mean on Twitter when I'm actually talking to someone. I will literally just go and ask them questions. And I know because it's in text, it can appear very short, but I'm like, I wish you wouldn't do this. This is a terrible idea. And I like Twitter because it means that you can go and talk to these people as you would walk up to them in a room and speak to them person to person. Obviously that gets you blocked and that's fine. I understand. But I do think that more people should hold Jill and Gisele accountable. I think there should be cultural pressure on wives who use their husbands like tools to get what they want. That's really what I'm here to say. I think that's just such a sign of feminine pathology that has gone unchecked, and I think that it's time to be done with that. We have to turn up the pressure on women who are choosing to use. To be fair, marriage as a whole is failing, it's completely falling apart. But for the women who are married and for women who are trying to use their husbands as tools to get what they want, we need to shout back at them and we need to let them know that this is not the right thing to do. Excuse me. I have a little bit of a cough. Don't have COVID, no worries. Let me see what you guys are thinking. Let's see. What do you feel about Kanye West? I don't really think a whole lot about him. I think he's going to bounce back just fine. I'm dying. People are commenting that he's Gap dropped a bunch of his products, but from my understanding, he was already done. He was already done with them. I remember that a while ago. As most avant-garde passage prize artist, my job is literally to see what humanity needed as an escape vector. By definition, people cannot perceive correctly and need me to survive. I'm not sure what that means. I am fine, robot voice. Yeah, that was basically John last night. Can't believe they pushed a stroke victim onto what amounts to the most stressful situation possible. Yeah, man. I felt really bad because the reporter, Dasha, I think, who initially did that NBC report, she was talking about how he had a hard time speaking and it made him really frustrated. And I'm like, yeah, it would make you really frustrated. And with guys, that tends to come out as like anger. They're like, I can't express myself. Women will tend to tear up. And I remember this one patient I had, she made almost a full recovery, but she would get so frustrated she would cry. I was like, I'm really sorry. I don't understand what you're saying. So I actually ended up, we took some really creative steps to kind of help her communicate until she could speak better again, which she did end up doing. So that was a happy story. Unfortunately, I don't see what's happening with John Fetterman as having a happy ending, because he is at the 6-month mark. And from what I understand, what I'm learning now, something I didn't know when I worked in healthcare, was that if you're not like making almost a full recovery by that time, then odds are good that that's just what you have and that's what you have to work with. Let's see here. Liz looks like she's headed to the pumpkin patch. I'm not, but I am going to pick up Andy here in a little bit. I agree with the sentiment. Don't agree with the prison industrial complex. Sure. I don't recall mentioning that. Behind every weak man is a woman pulling his strings. Not necessarily. I think that a man can be very weak by himself. In fact, I would argue that for a man to be fully weak, he would have absolutely no feminine impact at all. And I will not unpack single motherhood here today. That's a whole different topic. There's a whole lot. I got daily emails from the State Department. They're very predictable and funny. It's not just Biden that's mentally unstable. Yeah, I have seen some of the emails from Nancy Pelosi, and they are hilarious. Do talk to Just Parley Things. She has great panels. I'll have to look her up. Sickening thing besides the very act, they all point to FDR's wife and say, oh, well, she did it, therefore it's okay. Apparently Elon Musk walked into Twitter holding a kitchen sink. I saw that video, and he's changed his Twitter bio to Chief Twit, which I find is hilarious. Somebody says Jill is not even a real doctor. So she technically has a doctorate, and fine, I'll respect that level of education. But I will say, if you don't have a modicum of common sense, no education in the world is going to save you, honestly. What are your thoughts on the GOP potentially engaging in impeachment proceedings if they reclaim the House? I think that could be a mistake. Optics are not good. Okay, so as far as impeachment goes, I've been saying for a really long time, and I'm probably going to get into the election thing tomorrow for my video. Maybe I'll do a live stream, not sure what's going to happen. I think that Republicans absolutely should impeach Biden. I think that what he did with Saudi Arabia alone was enough to impeach him. I think that what he did with Ukraine was similarly enough so. 100%. I think that they have every reason to do so, and I don't think that bad optics is enough of a reason for them to not do it. Because they attempted to impeach Biden not once, but twice, and they never got a conviction. They never did. They knew they wouldn't. They just wanted the distraction. The issue with the Republicans is that even if I wanted them to do an impeachment, if I wanted them to go through with it and make it happen, because I do think that they could convict Biden relatively easily over whatever he's done. Don't call me on that. I'm not fully up on all the legal terms, and much as I care about this stuff, I have a hard time remembering all the legal terms. I don't think that Republicans have the spine to make it happen. And that's part of probably what I'm going to unpack tomorrow when I talk about the election, because as much as I would love to see a red wave, I'm not convinced that that is going to make a difference, unfortunately. So we'll see. Obviously, I could be wrong. There's some really great candidates running. We have Myra Flores, I think. And then we have a bunch of other people. Tudor Dixon had her debate with Gretchen Whitmer last night, and she really held her feet to the fire, which I thought was great. I didn't watch that one in its entirety either. I was more focused on Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin. That was crazy too. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced that Republicans have what it takes. Well, yeah, if he leaves, she's out of her position as FLOTUS. She doesn't want to give that up, as it comes with a lot of influence. Exactly. Let's see here. A caring wife is willing to challenge stupid choices. Exactly. And I think that's a tenet of tough love that I don't think enough people understand. Telling someone they're doing something stupid is not an insult or an attack on their masculinity. It is just telling them this is a perspective that you can't have. Like, you literally cannot have someone else's perspective, especially the masculine perspective in my instance, and Andy can't have the feminine perspective without me. So my role is to give him this different view and to tell him what I think, whether what he's doing is good or bad. That's really a good way of putting it. I appreciate it. Sup, fam. Welcome. Hi, Lid's looking great. Love you. Oh, I love you too. I love all you guys in my chat. You're welcome to come argue with me. Hey, I caught Lydia live stream. Welcome. I'm glad you're able to join me. I screw up all the time. Wish my wife pointed it out more. LOL. Have you told her that? Maybe she doesn't think you're screwing up. Maybe she thinks you're doing the right thing. Who knows? What are your thoughts on the GOP? Okay, I already answered that one. Okay. I cannot wait, you guys. I'm going to have super chats probably by the end of this week, beginning of next week. We have like 3,700 something watch hours. It's so annoying. Let me look. Let me see what I have. Because it says I have 4,000 watch hours. But then if you go to monetize, it says I only have 3,665 public watch hours. It's actually kind of annoying because that takes some time to catch up. But as soon as I hit 4,000, I'll be good to go. For sure. Hello, Liz. Hello, hello. Correctly predicted Trump and the pandemic. Was tortured for a year and left the facility in ruins with the command structure broken. Tudor Dixon is impressive. That's very true. Cake or pies? Cake 100%. You guys can disagree and be wrong if you so desire. You guys now have to tell me whether waffles or pancakes are the winner, and I will tell you who the actual winner is. It is neither of those two, but you guys can tell me which is better. Good to see you, Lydia. I haven't seen your solo stuff yet, but I'm happy that I caught you today. Welcome. I'm happy you could make it. Psalms of Proverbs are great to read, especially right after getting married. Absolutely, 100%. Let's see here. That was from My Big Fat Greek Wedding way before Game of Thrones. Interesting. I gotta look that out. I have always thought that's a piece of wisdom for sure. For a woman to be the neck that turns the head is so intriguing because what a woman brings is so much more subtle than what a man brings. And you guys probably all know how guys will get together with their buddies and they'll punch each other. You know, if they have a disagreement, they'll fight and they'll get it over with. Whereas with women, it's very subtle. It's very sometimes snarky. It's behind the back, which I've never liked. I've always kind of preferred to have male friends and male influence in my life because it's refreshing to be a little more upfront. I've always found I've never liked feeling like I can't say something or can't ask a question. I really like the transparency that comes with masculinity. But of course, femininity has its own strengths. I watched the first 15 minutes. It was too cringe and sad. It was terrible. The Fetterman debate was just awful. And I was so mad at his wife by the time it was done. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, give me a break. Somebody says blueberry pancakes, bacon, waffles, the syrup stays inside. Yes. Somebody said French toast, and French toast is actually what I was thinking. French toast is where it's at. French toast is amazing. So when I was growing up, French toast was also always super soggy because my mom used stale bread and then it had to be soaked for a really long time. French toast is awesome when it's made correctly. I think that it goes French toast, waffles, and then pancakes. Pancakes get soggy really fast. They're like these flat, lifeless little blobs. They're supposed to be like light and fluffy or whatever. They never are. It never works out. At least with waffles, you have more of a potential for like a crispy outside because it's directly exposed to the irons. Air fry French toast. That is an interesting idea. I love my air fryer. But yeah, so French toast is the way to go. Somebody says I only punch my real good friends. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's an aspect of male friendship that girls just do not have an equivalent. We really don't. Unfortunately, I think that we might be better for it. And I think that there's such a, I don't know, there seems to be such a weakness to female relationships, and I'm not sure how to fix it or what to do about it. I do have lovely lady friends, but it is hard because you know that their feelings are a little more sensitive and you don't want to step on their toes and you don't want to estrange them. So you can have these strongly held beliefs, but you have to couch them in a very tactful way. Biscuits and gravy. Yeah, that's a good way to go too, for sure. Churro French toast. Oh yes. Oh my gosh. Now you guys are making me hungry. Andy and I went to In-N-Out Burger last night, and their burgers are still like $3. I think his was $3.40 and mine was $3.05. And they run a great operation over there. I was very impressed. Their food was awesome. It was exactly what you hope for when you go to get a hamburger. It's not like a weird McDonald's hamburger. And they reminded me of no one so much as Chick-fil-A. All right, you guys, I'm going to wrap it here. Hopefully I made my point relatively clearly. I do think, oh, did I get animal style? Andy did get animal style French fries, and that was awesome. Hey Liz, this is the first time I've watched you on our YouTube channel. Love watching Timcast. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you all for chipping in, chiming in, whatever. Just confusing myself at this point. I appreciate all your input, and you are always welcome to argue with me. My feelings will not be hurt. Thank you guys very much once again. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.